like I find in all my other walks of life, I can't share everything I'm passionate about because, my wife doesn't care about AMS ads or if I'm twisted up in like this, So if you really want to connect with some fantastic people, then just genuinely connect with them first and foremost, and then all sorts of good things come from that.
This is the Crit RPG podcast, your one-stop shop for everything lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Crit RPG podcast, the only podcast where we talk to authors about violins and pianos and having good wine. And with me today is it Phil Tucker or PWTucker?
Phil Tucker.
Phil Tucker. Well, as always with my very long intros, Phil is the author of many books, including Dawn of the Void and Bastion and other books that you might not have heard of yet, but he's going to talk to us about. So, Phil, hi, and thank you for coming. You're here because Bastion 5 or 6 has just landed.
18. No, Bastion 3.
What?
Last Rock. Yeah.
I could have sworn number 3 released last year. Are you sure?
No, let me double check. Yeah. No, Bastion 3 came out on the 6th. So it's been just about 1 week since Last Rock dropped.
Nice. That's so cool. Obviously, this recording is going to be released a little bit later, so I hope you enjoy this time capsule. But yeah, we have been talking about, my God, we have already been talking like an hour and 15 minutes before the podcast, the YouTube podcast even started. It was absolutely amazing. We talked about how to start a good book, why some books are so successful and why some aren't. We talked about, again, violins and pianos. And yeah, about a little bit about like why Dawn of the Void wasn't as long as you wanted it to be. So that's in the Patreon material. Go check it out if you want. But let's talk about Bastion. Why and how did you write Bastion?
Why? I think it's because enough ideas finally fell into place that made the idea of a long-running big epic series seem viable. I've been sort of back burner idly brainstorming the series since maybe 2014. Yeah, that's when I had the first idea. But that first idea by itself wasn't enough. I find that for me, usually what happens is I need like 2 or 3 contrasting ideas that play off each other. And the tension between them ends up generating the engine for the series. So that first idea was like a little bit of the setting and the city of Bastion itself, but it was inert. I couldn't do anything with it. I even thought maybe I'd just make it a setting for like a Dungeons and Dragons game or something, but that never came about either. So I just wrote this brainstorming file and I left it. And then a few years later, a second idea dropped into place that I kind of like linked with that first. And I was like, okay, that's now got some more legs to it, but still not enough. If I had tried writing it at that point, I probably would have gotten like 10, 15 chapters in and run out of steam. And then I think back in, I don't even know when I wrote the first book, 2020 or something. The third idea dropped in and it just contrasted really well with the first two. And it opened up, I think I'd watched Made in Abyss, the anime show, which is about these children who are descending into this massive Studio Ghibli-esque hellish abyss. And every layer they go down is a distinct, different environment with its own monsters and stuff. And it's incredibly traumatizing and absolutely not for children. Even though the protagonists are like 9 years old or something. It's really intense. But I think that provided me a sense of the third idea that contrasted with the first two. And I was like, now I have enough to jump in. And I actually think that's normally the way I write. Like I need to have enough opposing, contrasting ideas that generate enough friction that I'm excited to resolve those problems before I jump into any long-running series. But when that third idea dropped in and I was like, okay, there's an entire hell outside of Bastion full of its own wonders and horrors and mysteries. let's go find out what they are. And that's when I decided to jump into book 1 and start writing that.
Okay. You want to pitch it to people who haven't read it yet?
No, not really.
Okay, good. It's a book. Go read it.
Yeah, if you want.
I mean, like we've already like I think just the number of ideas, right? City of Bastion, hells are out there. Oh yeah, and also there's some stuff about reincarnation. You should go and read it. It's good.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a series that I'm having a lot of fun with, and it's been pretty amazing to see other readers resonate with it too, and want to learn more and pick up the next books. But in short, the hero Scorio is reborn into this city in hell, and told that he is part of this cohort called Immortal Great Souls, whose job is to endlessly die in a war in hell and be reborn, retrained, and go back out and continue fighting this eternal war. Except within minutes of his being reborn, he is accused of being on something called the Red List, which is, it makes him verboten, and he is thrown into this underworld to effectively die. He doesn't, and then he comes back and proves everybody wrong. And in doing so, starts to piece together what's actually going on in this nightmarish city and the hell beyonds, and asking questions that most people aren't comfortable trying to answer.
And it's a cultivation story, right?
Yeah, so it's got sort of a Cradle-esque series of tiers, or Ciencia style, where through training and mastering of what's called in my series your igneous heart, and which is where you burn mana, you ascend to higher and higher tiers of power, which unlock new abilities and superpowers on your part. Some more effective than others, so not everyone is equally powerful. But you can only go as deep into hell as your rank allows you. If you go too deep, something called the curse.
You must be this hot to enter.
Yeah, but I got that was from, you know how in diving, if you come up too quick, you get the bends. So if you go too deep into hell, you get the spiritual equivalent of the bends. You simply don't have the fortitude to withstand that intensity of depth and magical intensity. So that's one of the I don't know. This is the moment where I choose whether to spend 40 minutes talking about all the things I'm excited about in the series, or just encourage you to go read it yourselves and see. I mean,
I very much enjoyed it, so you should totally go check it out. Do you want to talk about why that's not a railroad? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, I think, before the show started with Dawn of the Void, but
why I did not put Bastion on Royal Road?
Yes.
I think I actually just preceded my awareness and appreciation of Royal Road.
Oh, true. Yeah.
I think that I was coming off of writing some like different like epic fantasies and like straight fantasies. I was just putting like right onto Amazon, like sword and sorcery stuff. And then I read some like really great progression fantasy series, and it just brought me back to like a lot of my favorite childhood animes. And just endless decades of playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, man, this is like bread and butter for me. Like I grew up on this stuff. And I thought it'd be really fun to go and just explore that place with a bit more of an epic fantasy vibe to it, with the world building and all that. And that's why the books are so thick. But I didn't even really, I was kind of aware of Royal Road, but I hadn't really done a deep dive or even thought it was something. I think Royal Road to me was more of like associated still with like translated Ciencia, like Chinese novels, and to me it felt more like that realm still back then. So it just wasn't something I considered.
And then it changed.
Yeah,
we talked a bit about the three. Yeah, right. 2 novels you got on Royal Road,
right?
And how they landed.
Yeah. Skadi Saga was my first attempt, and that was that did not do as well as I'd hoped. It did really well in terms of finding like really generous readers who were willing to buy in and like be part of the journey.
People who just love the Skadi.
Right. But as I was mentioning to you before, like if you're trying to remain a full-time author, there's a certain threshold that your books need to perform at for you to continue putting time into them. So unfortunately, a Skadi Saga was not rising above the point where I'd be able to do that full-time and support my family, and keep my kids in school and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I might have to I reached like a really satisfying end to a narrative arc. It wasn't like a cliffhanger. And I'm going to go back to it. It's going to be released this fall. I think book 1's coming out in September and book 2 in November this year. And Audible hired the most amazing narrator for it. She's this Norwegian film actress who just amazing. I don't even want to write the next sequel until I hear her narrate it to get me back in that mind frame. But I am over the moon with whom they picked. So that's going to keep going, but it's going to be more of an Amazon thing moving forward.
That would be my question, right? If you put it on Amazon, if it did well over there, because I think, well, without spoiling the Patreon stuff too much, I think that there is more of a space for the kind of very introspective, kind of character and trauma-driven, story on KU or on Kindle than there is on Royal Road. Because Royal Road is mostly, and I mean this in a positive way. I'm a Royal Road reader myself, after all. People reading on subway, they just really want to like have some fun before they get to work or at work or coming home from work. Or they're sitting on the couch. We talked about this, right? They want to put on some pop and not, violin music and pianos.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. I really hope that you have like all the success in the world with Skadi Saga on KU. It's very selfish because it gives me hope. Cool. Speaking of giving me hope, what's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
I think it's situational. It kind of depends a little bit on where I've been along in my career. In terms of just generic advice, I think it's just don't give up. Which is easy at first when you're fired up and you're like, I would never give up. This is the best. Like, I want to write forever. And I think that one of the traps can be if you start and you find success, it's easy to think that, you're just going to be successful forever. Right. And one of the things I've realized is that a lot of readers will follow a story and not the author. And so they may, you may have tons of success with one particular series and it can sell really well. And you're like on top of the world. And you're like, if I make this income forever, I'll be independently wealthy by this point and I can then do whatever I want. And you can make all these plans. And then your series ends and you're like, okay, on to series number 2. And you expect the same amount of success. And then it could be like crickets. And everyone's like, no, we're not interested in that at all. And then you're like, what happened? And then you still have to finish that series because you have a certain obligation to your readers. But then a lot of writers at that point can get so discouraged that they stop. They're like, I just can't do a 3rd series. What if it doesn't do well? But in my experience, that's when you need to really have the resolve to keep pushing through, because it's not about your talent. We were talking about talent before. It's not about whether or not you're good at something. It's about whether or not you can remain passionate and dedicated to it to continue until you find more success. Or if your first series doesn't do well, that can be even more discouraging. You're like, I just don't have it. I can't do it. I've been pouring my heart onto the page and like 3 people have told me it's okay. Like I'm going to just do something else. Yeah. I think if you can hang in there, if this is important enough to you, if you can take a long-term enough view and say, you know what, this didn't work out, maybe the next one will. And then maybe that one won't work out. And you're like, well, maybe the 3rd one will. And if you're actively reading and learning and asking questions And whenever you see someone succeed, you're asking yourself, why is that succeeding? What is it about this that is resonating with everybody? I genuinely think you'll find success in the long term if you don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote 5 books, maybe, before I found any success.
Mm-hmm.
I've unpublished them all. They were okay. You know, some of them had things that I'm still really fond of, but they just weren't commercially viable. And some people liked them, and a lot of people were like, no, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had quit on book number 3 or book number 4 or even book number 5, I just, I would have missed out on so much fun doing this full time that I've since been able to achieve, so
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are starting out, or even if you've had 1 successful series under your belt, or maybe even 2, it's like, just don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
If this is important enough to you, you will get there, or you will get there again. If you just hang in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, the caveat. If only stop your job if your job loses your money. That means
Yeah.
If you are earning more money writing than you are earning in your job, then you can quit.
Right.
Before that, don't. Unless, of course, like you're getting emotionally abused at your job and like completely want out. Like, I'm not your boss. You can do whatever you want. But if your job is tolerable and you're okay with it, it's not good advice to drop everything just because you have one series.
Yeah, that happened to me back in the days when, if you had a free Kindle book, when it went back to being paid, the promotion ended, it would simply swap over to the equivalent rank on the Amazon store.
Okay.
So I had a book that I did a promo on New Year's, and it went up to like number 3 on the entire store for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then it flipped over to number 3 in the entire store for paid. And I think overnight I made like $7,000 or something. It just blew. I had like a panic attack because I'd never seen so much money coming in all at once. And it was more money than I even thought was possible. And I was like, I've done it. I figured it out. I know how to be an author. And so my wife and I moved to a different state because I was going to do it full time. I was very young. I had no idea actually what I was doing. And then my subsequent books did not do well. And I ended up having to get a job in our new home. And it was this part of this huge ordeal. But if I had known, what you just said right then, I would think, okay, let's put that money in a savings account, stay with what I got, and see if it lasts. It's so easy to get excited when you see that surreal injection of cash. You're like, I can do this forever. And sometimes that's not the case.
A friend of mine has this distinction between living money and cake money.
Yeah.
And she says that writing, and she also designs covers, like beautiful covers. She did the omnibus cover for Harry Potter in German.
Wow.
Like really, really cool stuff. He's like, that's all cake money. That's what I use to travel to Japan, or buy a new TV or go out fancy dinner or something like that. And for me, it's the same way. So the writing money all goes to gacha games.
Right.
But that will change, of course, if I ever earn money off of this. But the thing that I kind of want to ask you, like, going off of that question, what have you learned that makes it more likely that your next series is going to succeed and that you're not stuck at this point where?
And I wish I could answer that because I'm still unsure. I just released a series this January called, in hindsight, obviously a terrible title, called Creek Chess, which I have since pivoted and changed the gods of the game. And it's a sort of Ender's Game / Iron Prince science fiction arena combat trilogy that I thought would do well. And it has not, absolutely not done well at all. So I don't think I have developed any predictive powers as to what is going to sell. I think everyone is capable of phoning it in and playing it safe and like just looking at what the top anime are that season and writing slight spin on one of them. That's probably as safe as you can get. But if that's not something you're excited about, that's just not going to work, right? So the problem, I think, for all authors is we get excited about random shit. Like something catches our attention and it's shiny and interesting and we've never seen it before. And we're like, hey, maybe everyone else will think this is equally exciting, right? And then you put your heart into it and you put it out there and the world may simply say, yeah, no one's really, except for like, someone in South Africa and then like 2 guys in Croatia and then like a 4th fan in like, Kentucky. Those 4 guys, hey, we've been waiting for this novel all along. And you're like, yay, for the 5 of us. No one else seems to really care.
And then after
ahead,
you die, it's like being caught in college class. Like, it's such a good writer.
Yeah, right. That would be nice, but I don't think so. But like, for example, after my Chronicles of the Black Gate, that's the series that allowed me to go full time. And I thought I suddenly had the Midas touch. I was like, oh, anything I write will sell great. I'm going to write a Sumerian necromancer heist trilogy, right? It's going to make me tons of cash. Yeah. And then, I put it out there and the entire world was like, we don't care about Sumerian necromancer heist trilogies, buddy. And I was like, what? Really? That's not what everyone's been waiting for? And no, it wasn't.
That was just a Sumerian judgment.
It was they did not hesitate past Sumerian judgment on that one, that's for sure. So I don't think I've got any ability to be predictive about what's going to work. I hope that what I'm excited about next will be shared by everyone. But I think what I've learned is to like I was talking before about just maintaining that staying power where if you throw something into the void and no one cares, you're like, all right, pull up your big boy pants and let's keep on trucking. Let's find the next project. Let's not get too disheartened. Let's, continue to be professional about this and finish what you start. Like, I don't ever want to like put out a book 1 and then no one likes it. And then I just drop the series because that's just not fair to whoever gave it a chance. But I think you just develop a certain amount of discipline and professionalism where you're like, some series will do well, some series will completely tank. And at the end of the day, you've just got to be able to take a deep breath, get over the disappointment because you put your heart into something. It's always sucks if no one else particularly cares. And try again and just keep going up to bat. And
give yourself outs.
Give yourself outs?
Yeah, don't be me. Don't plan like, oh, I'm just going to keep writing the story because it's just fun for me. And then you realize that like this story is fun and I love it and I want to keep writing it. But I also have other stories that I also want to write that are maybe more successful and will maybe earn me more money. And then suddenly you're realizing like, damn, I have to at least do 380,000 word books on this. Yeah.
But then it all depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like I've been full time now for a while, and I want to remain full time, which means I am very conscious of sales. Like I just don't have the luxury to indulge in passion projects that are not going to keep my kids in school. Like I have to be very businesslike about this. But if I was working a job that I was fortunate enough to enjoy enough to stay at, and I was just trying to make cake money, then I might be like, fuck it, I am going to write a Sumerian heist trilogy for 10 million words. And if you guys don't like it, you can suck it because you're wrong. Right? Then you can do whatever you want. And odds are, if you're truly passionate about it, if you stay with it long enough and maybe rewrite the first, have you thought about rewriting the beginning of your book? You should look into that. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Ow.
Not because I read it, just because you mentioned you're already doing it.
Mein Leben.
No, but like if you go back and polish it and maybe like see maybe where it wasn't catching on or something that you've identified, and you're really super passionate about your series and you really enjoy it, odds are it is going to resonate with folks.
I think to be honest, like the new start really helps it because most people were super confused and now they aren't.
That's a plus.
Someone, I think it was Raja, my friend, who wrote, well, now it reads as though now I read it and I'm confused, but it feels as though I'm supposed to be confused, and that's good. So it's nice. Cool.
That is good.
You're full-time, right? So what's the average word count that you're putting out each day? in order to sustain that?
It's kind of what's the term? Something or bust. I forget. It's like a gold mining term.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
if only I had a facility with words.
Yeah, maybe you should ask a writer or something.
Rush. I don't know. Anyway, it depends.
Rush
If I'm, there we go. If the project's going well, I think I average about 4,000 or 5,000 a day.
Oh wow, really good.
Well, it's tricky because I have 2 little kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like to spend time with them and be present with the family. So I'm not usually getting 8 hours.
Okay.
But if I'm on a roll, it averages about 4 to 5, and then it can spike up to like 8.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Or 10 if it's like if I get on a really good run where I just really know what I'm doing and the pace is picked up. So I can write pretty quickly, and I'm also lucky that I write pretty clean first draft copy.
Okay, yeah. Like one thing I've noticed in all my interviews with people is 2 things. Everyone who's famous has a point where they said, you know what, fuck it. Every single one. And the other one was, I write very clean first drafts.
Right.
I don't. Mine are train wrecks. but like nothing makes sense.
Do you, when you're writing, are you seeing it like a movie that you're transcribing?
Yeah.
That's how you approach it?
Yep.
But do your actors just sometimes don't know the lines, or they wander off the...
I don't know what they're going to say. So what helps me is to write down, this is what I want this paragraph to be about, and then write that paragraph.
So you outline paragraph by paragraph as you go?
Yep.
Wow.
I have like a rolling outline. So I have like, I'm a Scrum Master, I'm an Agile coach, it's a backlog. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I got very rough stuff at the bottom, like integrate this part with the main storyline, do emotions. And then
do emotions.
I have to redo the emotions sometimes because it's a long story. 180,000 words, actually. And then at the top, I have more concrete stuff. Like this next paragraph is about the guard towers exploding. The paragraph afterwards is about people reacting to it. Because otherwise, I don't know.
You get
lost in some weird, like, how were guard towers constructed?
Right.
No one cares. That's kind of like, Sumerian necromancers, man. Sorry, what?
Those rabbit holes that you're like, wait, I've just built out an entire thing that I will never actually put on the page.
Yeah, it's like you select it all, and then with a small sigh, you hit backspace. And your word count plummets by 500 words.
Or Control X and put it in a research file.
Yeah, to make it that then forget about. Exactly.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I don't really outline anymore. It's not quite pantsing because I'll have a general sense of the architecture of the story, where I'm like, I know where I want it to go, and I roughly know what needs to happen. I don't know how it'll get there, but I'll figure that out as I go. But what I do is I have a writing journal, like a Google Doc. And every day I'll just sort of open up a new entry and I'll just talk to myself, be like, okay, what the fuck's going on? We're here. They just did this, and now, okay, why are they doing? Okay, so maybe this will be okay. What if they do this now? And like, okay, that will connect to this. Okay, good, done. And then I'll just go and write for the day. Yeah. So it's almost a way to externalize my my brainstorming.
Cool.
And I work through it over the course of a journal entry. So it's like almost anticipatory outlining, but not necessarily even like beat by beat. It's more just figuring out the emotional arc that needs to continue. There's a really great book by, is it Libby Bowman, called Take Off Your Pants? That made a huge impact on me. Take Off Your Pants by Libby Hawker. Mm-hmm. I can't recommend it highly enough. The entire premise of that book is that if you can figure out the emotional engine of your character, what's at stake for them, what they're, what have they got wrong, what do they not understand about the world, and what does the story need to do to correct that. Then as you improvise or pants your writing, you're aware of what challenges are appropriate versus irrelevant to their emotional growth, right? So like with Tyrion Lannister, you might say, he has a huge insecurity about his position in his family. He really wants to impress his siblings and his father. And he craves, he's a romantic who craves a true love. And then as you're writing, if you're George R. R. Martin, as you're sitting on your stack of money and you're just writing the next Tyrion scene, you might be like, okay, Tyrion has to run into a challenge now in King's Landing. Should it be how to set up a shipping guild to make money for his family? Or should it be him commissioning a portrait of his father to impress his dad? Right? Both of them are shit ideas, but you can already tell that him making more money for the Lannisters doesn't affect his emotional arc. But him trying to impress his dad with a portrait ties in with what he's got going on at his deepest levels. And that's where you're going to mine the best plot and the most intense character interactions. When he presents his dad with a portrait and the dad's, throws it in the fire, like all of a sudden Tyrion is, So Libby Hawker basically says, figure out what's driving your characters emotionally, what's at stake for them. And then as you write the book, keep that in mind, and you will intuitively know where to send your characters and what to confront them with in order to hit them where they're weakest or where it hurts the most and force them into character growth. And I think that before that, I'd be plot centric and I'd be like, this is what needs to happen. And then my characters would just have to like run along the trail that I'd marked out, almost like being on a tour at a zoo. Like, you're going to go past these exhibits and I hope you fucking like tigers because that's what you're seeing, right? But now it's like, okay, no, wait, where do this character's actually got a phobia for camels. I need to put them past the camel exhibit, right? There's no point sending them to the sloth house. Yeah. So once you kind of like get in a lock on who your characters are and what they are scared of, what they're hung up about, what they are trying to do and why, as for me at least, the need to outline started to evaporate more and more because I was able just to intuit where the story needed to go in order to fuck with them the most.
That was a beautiful bracket. I would never be able to do a bracket like that. That was tied off and like with a little bow on top. Great stuff.
I get no commissions from Libby, by the way. So,
adding on top of that, I have this book over here, The Art of Character by David Corbett. I recommend it every second podcast, basically. It goes exactly into what you just said, and his advice is, because I intellectualize these characters whenever I start to, think more about them, right? Because it's a bit safer. You're not really getting into all the emotions because I'm a very emotional person. I tried watching, we were talking about it, the Studio Ghibli movies. I started watching The Return of the Cat, of all movies. And I just couldn't because I was crying so hard because the art was so beautiful. So that's the kind of person that I am. I'm a very sensitive flower. But I start to intellectualize my characters, which isn't good because I want to feel like the characters feel. I want to, be in their shoes, do a bit of acting. Yeah. And so David says, hey, writing scenes that put these characters' wants and needs and temptations and coping mechanisms to the test is how you really find out who these characters are. And I think if we combine those two ideas, we might be onto something. Because don't outline.
One of the fundamental reasons I write fantasy in the first place is because you can come up with the most incredible crucibles for character possible, right?
Yeah.
In the real world, you can have a divorce, your child can get sick, you can get fired from a job, you find out your spouse is cheating on you. All these things are crucible for character. Like, how do you respond? And they're universal and they can be really powerful, but you're kind of limited to like the normal run of human experience. In fantasy, it can be like, okay, who's going to be sacrificed to feed the dragon? Like, you got to pick someone in your group. They've got to go in there and die. And it's like, that doesn't really happen that often in the real world. And you can come up with these amazing, emotionally brutal, outlandish moments that force your characters to reveal who they are. But at heart, that's what you're doing. You're creating moments of revelation. You're saying, this is a character, he's got to go through this experience. And depending on how he handles it, or this is who he'll be when he comes out the other side. And I think that's what fantasy really allows you to do. It allows you to take any sort of person, whether it's a self-insert common man or someone completely different, like a murder hobo or a paladin, and you get to say, look, this is something absolutely world-ending that no one could be prepared for, that no one has ever faced. How would you handle it? And how would you come out the other side? And would you be consumed by guilt, or would you be empowered and ready to kick ass? And I think a lot of readers sign up because if they buy into your character, they then want to see what that character does and how they handle all the impossible, amazing things that are coming their way. But you need that emotional core. You need that verisimilitude where the person feels real, right? And that's what we were talking about before with Super Supportive or MGG or Dungeon Crawler Carl. You know, all these books start off with vulnerable, emotional characters that you immediately buy into. And then you're like, I want to see what happens to Alden, right? I believe in this person. I care about this person. I want the best for them. And I know the author's going to fuck with them. And I want to see how Alden gets through it.
Yeah. Fuck the author. Robert Bird, right? We were talking about him earlier. He has this, like, I think it's BIC or something, the acronym, where it's, you have to believe the character actually exists. You have to be invested into the character, and you have to care about him. And so believing is mostly doing through prose, right? How do they talk? Do they talk in a believable way? Are they, do they have do they talk about concrete things or just abstracts, right? Because that's also kind of different. Invest is, are they capable? If I'm spending time with this person, will I have a good time? And care is the vulnerability part that we were talking about. I really love this book. It's really good. Cool. Speaking about, believability, investment, and care. I think the segue actually works. So
here we go, regardless.
Anyway, you might not even know this, but my good friend Haylock just released his first book, Heretical Fishing. And he's not paying me for this, he didn't even ask for it, but I'm gonna shout him out anyway, in the most cool and flashy way that I can think of. So yeah, if you're in the market for something that's a little bit like Beware of Chicken, if you're into things like not becoming the chosen one and instead hanging out with cute animals, then this one's for you. It's available on Audible and on Kindle Unlimited. Go and give it a read. I'm sure you won't regret it. What's one thing that you would go back to and change if you could? Or, in other words, what's something that you learned that you now do better, or that was left an imprint on you?
Probably would not title that series Krieg Chess.
Krieg Chess?
Yeah, I would not call it that. I would have called it something more like I did. I changed it to Gods of the Game. But taking your question a bit more seriously,
not Valley Billiard.
Something I would change. I don't know if I would, because anything I would change would just have made me more successful, and I think that just sets you up for failure down the road if you're not learning lessons. Right? It's like being really lucky and you walk through a war zone and everyone's shot misses. You haven't necessarily grown as a person or gotten better. You just were lucky, right? So I feel like all the failures I've had have sort of taught me, each one has taught me a bit more resilience or assumptions I've been making, or just how to pay attention more to the market and what I'm writing and why.
And what's your favorite one of those?
The biggest lesson I think that I've learned is to connect with other authors. The first few years I was very much isolated and just writing from a place of passion and throwing books out into the world without any regard for the business side of it or how the people were approaching their careers. And I made every mistake possible. because there was no one to tell me I was being an idiot. I was just being an idiot in splendid isolation. But when I entered the SPFBO, the Self-Publishing Fantasy blog off, I connected with a bunch of the other competitors, and we formed a community. And that's when I really started talking with other indie fantasy authors. And you learn so much from being connected to other passionate, intelligent, smart people who take this really super seriously and really care about succeeding. And our community is so positive. There's so many generous people who are willing to stop everything and sort of listen to a question you might have, that I think if I had connected with authors way earlier, I think I would have saved myself years of like just throwing words down out the window. So if that were advice to be given to someone who's starting out today, I think luckily today it's so much easier. You've got endless Discord channels. You've got all sorts of like subreddits. You've got Royal Road communities. But I think the trick is to not just like go in asking for stuff. The trick is to go in as a real fan and as someone who wants to contribute and to spend time there and show that you're just as passionate as they are. And you're not just looking for a shout out.
Yeah, exactly.
Spend your time getting to know people, read their stuff, be part of the conversation, and enjoy being with other like-minded people first. And then when it comes your time to be like, hey, I'm launching a book, you'll actually have friends who'll be happy to help you, as opposed to people kind of giving you the side eye because you've been there 2 weeks and you're already asking for a shout out.
That's kind of be understated. This podcast exists because I wanted a place to interview my friends from a Discord server. And it's so important, the last part also that you said. The biggest rule of our server is be generous. And I have been very, very fortunate in that every single one of that person on that server is like very generous.
I thought you were going to say, and I have been very, very, very generous.
No, and I have been very, 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 very receptive of generosity. I like it a lot.
There you go.
No, this is a good advice for any community you want to go into. If you're going to a new church, bring cake, right? If you're in a new job, bring donuts. Like, do something. Show that you are generous and genuinely be generous. You cannot, even subconsciously, want something back for that. Because the moment you do, your gift loses all of its charm. And people will think you are I want to put out that backstabbing bitch or like schmoocher, right? So cultivating...
And you're absolutely right. It's its own reward, right? So like today I have connected with these like fantastic authors and we get together. We'll rent an Airbnb somewhere and all of us will descend upon it and we'll just sit around the kitchen talking shop. And it's the most like-minded people in the world. Like I can talk with them about AMS ads, or we can jump into how to craft character, or we can talk about our favorite stories growing up. And it's a community of like people that get you, right? Like I find in all my other walks of life, I can't share everything I'm passionate about because, my wife doesn't care about AMS ads or if I'm twisted up in like this, So if you really want to connect with some fantastic people, then just genuinely connect with them first and foremost, and then all sorts of good things come from that.
Yeah.
One being career longevity, because now you're plugged in with best practices, and people will tell you, "Oh shit, guys, the Facebook like platform, they just changed the dashboard. Ads are useless. Stop spending your money there because it's just not working." Like I would never have known that myself. So, or guys, the Kindle payout this month it's dropped to 0.0039. How far are you willing to let it drop before Kindle Unlimited no longer works for you? And then you have conversations about viability, or does anyone have an agent? Like those conversations happen as a result of being part of a great community. And that keeps you sort of invigorated and plugged in and is super healthy for your career long-term too.
Yeah. And also, if you are hitting a slog, you will find weird crows that descend on you and tell you you're dumb, and write about merchant crabs, I guess. And then you have to put them in your novels and be thankful and everything. It's very annoying. But anyway, they pull you out of slumps.
Yeah, exactly. They understand, right? So if you're going through a tough time, it's the perfect crowd to vent to, because they'll just make fun of you in a way that fills you with spite and gets you back to writing.
Yeah.
Super healthy.
Well, not really. Host is way too self-deprecating for that. Like, you just can't. Great person, really great person. But I definitely agree, and be generous and cultivate that sense of generosity being its own reward, because it feels good to do something not because you want something, but just because you're a nice person. Try it out.
And it's like the basis of making friends, right? You don't make friends because of what you can get out of them. You make friends because they're cool people. You like to spend time with them. And then as a result, friends are there for you when you need them.
Yeah, exactly.
And the same applies for this career.
Yes. We need to move on.
Alas.
Well, now's actually one of the most fun parts. What's one book that you love, and why is it awesome?
A book that I recently loved, and why is it awesome? I just finished reading Davis Ashura's Steel Sharpens, which is part of his... Let me make sure I get the name of the series right. The Eternal Ephemera, Book 2. And it was fantastic. The premise of the series is kind of a progression fantasy. It's just straight Amazon, not on Railroad. And it's part of his extended universe, so some familiar famous faces show up. But what this second... I love the first book too, but I think this second book really went up a notch, and that's because he put together this crew of people, and he threw them into a really bad situation. I don't want to just give away the story, but it's just a masterclass in watching characters grow, evolve, challenge each other, struggle to come together as a team while under like incredible pressure in an alien environment. And when I finished the book, for like a couple of nights afterwards, I was just actively jonesing to get back into that vibe, to like be with that crew of people, to see how they were going to handle the next attack, how they were going to continue to get through one more night of like danger. Cool. So Davis just did a fantastic job. I think most people know him for his The Testaments of Steel. That blew up on our Progression Fantasy a year or two ago. But his latest series is just really fantastic. And I'm currently reading, I'll do a twofer, Alec Hudson's Pale Sword. That's not Progression Fantasy, but Alec writes beautifully. And it's like classic fantasy in like a sword and sorcery. It feels like coming home to like your favorite fantasy books, but with just completely fresh. And I can't speak highly enough about Alec either. So those two have just been like knockouts.
Awesome. Cool. I've recently been enjoying Dungeon of Knowledge. At the time that we're talking, it should be on Rising Stars. And that's actually written by a guy who I met when he was reading Torchbearer, Time Walk. And he was making these like very extensive grammar corrections that made me feel really bad at the start. And I was like, oh, cool, it's actually really nice. And he's just, first of all, really dope dude. Second of all, he wrote a 1,000,000-word book.
Wow.
And is now putting it out on Railroad. It's good.
Dungeon of Knowledge?
Dungeon of Knowledge, yeah. Has a kick-ass cover that we all helped him with, but he came up with on his own. The writing is great.
Oh yeah, that is a great cover.
Right? Oops, the writing is also great. The stories are cool. It's about a young fae who loves knowledge. And she's in the library when her city gets destroyed by an evil lich. And now she is a dungeon core. But it's not a traditional dungeon core novel where the dungeon core is like sitting in a dark basement and like rots away, but stuff happens. It's very interactive. and it's a raid combat based dungeon core lit RPG, which I haven't seen before, except for maybe something like it was Jay Hado's Son of Flame.
That looks really great.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely amazing. It's been rocking up the charts, and he hasn't even been going after shoutouts all that much. Like, this is all organic growth. 904 followers in less than a month. Really happy for the guy. He deserves all of it.
That's
so
huge.
If you're looking for something a little bit different,
15 chapters, and he already has 900 followers. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And like I said, like, he has a lot more written. That book is almost done.
Wow.
No, it is completely done. It's great.
Yeah, he's in a great place if he's got all that already sitting and is blowing up.
Yeah. Next up will be to introduce him to some publishers. I will do the thing. We'll see.
Yeah, watch out, Aethon.
Oh yeah, like this for sure would be a really good Aethon story, I think. Aethon, maybe Portal. Could be really cool. Also, because it has such a big cast, maybe a sound booth could be nice. All right, so it's good. Right, Phil. Shoutouts?
Man. Shoutouts. I keep going to like this. I'm really excited about stuff that everyone else is already excited about.
Go on, do it.
I don't know if you guys have heard of this up and coming story. It's like I really hope it does well. It deserves to. It's called Super Supportive.
Oh yeah.
It's just really fucking brilliant.
Hard to find.
Hard. If you haven't tried it, I think it's worth. Don't just dismiss it because only like 400,000 people are following it. Give it a chance. It's just really good.
It's definitely a standout. Yeah, it is something else from everything else in Royal Road, but in the best way possible.
Yeah. Something else. Okay. More seriously, I'd recommend everyone try Rob J. Hayes' his Titan Hoppers.
Oh yeah.
That's super fun. It's got a great Warhammer 40K vibe with like, the epic scale and this lost fleet, and it's science fiction and progression done in this really compelling way. Rob's a phenomenal author, and I think Titan Hoppers is already doing great, but I would always be happy to see it get even more attention. It's phenomenal stories.
Now I know, like, it reminded me of you when I read it. Yeah, it's very cool.
Did you read it?
Oh yeah, I read it. Yeah, over on vacation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you more about it in the after show. But I very much enjoyed it, and I'm going to look forward to read Tower Climbers, which is book 2. So yeah,
and Rob told me that he just finished book 3.
Oh, nice.
So book 3 is in the bag and coming. I don't know when, but it's finished. So it's a good time to jump in on the series because the third one's coming out soon.
Cool. Dope. It's about, well, without spoiling too much, it's about a space fleet that circles around these gigantic, well, half stations, half ships called Titans. And they kind of like salvage everything off of it. So very Warhammer 40K because no one knows how technology works anymore.
Yeah,
and all
the aesthetic is so cool.
Yeah, like the world building is, without dissing anything else of the book, the rest of the stuff is like also really cool. Characters are very, very well built. Plot is really tense. But the world building, really, really interesting. Like you haven't seen something like that before, so you should totally go and check it. Yeah. Another shout out, last one.
Yeah, Benedict Patrick's Slumdog Deckbuilder. Card Mage. It's his it's this fantastic story of an up and coming guy in this fantasy city, but living like completely in the worst part of town, no hope of advancement. And there's an entire economy built around like a deck, a summon monster deck that people play in arenas. So the fights are really fun, where he's pulling in different creatures from mythology. But also his struggle to like put together a team. So what they do is they pool their cards together. Yeah. Because most people can't even afford just one card, much less an entire deck by themselves. So the story basically documents this poor guy's attempt to put together a team that has a fighting chance of being taken seriously and working their way up the league. So you've got this great arena where the fights are just phenomenal, and the effects. You can tell that Benedict's a huge card player. In terms of, it's not quite like Slay the Spire where there's like different effects, but it's more like again straight summons. It's just really, really well done, really fun. Benedict writes phenomenally well. I think it's done pretty well. But again, just like with Rob, I'd love more people to read it, because I think Benedict knocked it out of the park with this one. So if you enjoy card building progression, this one is right up your alley.
Okay. I think I will round this one out with another monster tamer story. And that's She of Many Dragons. And it's written by Honor Ray, and that's all I have to say about it.
Done.
Yep, done. Bought.
You're doing okay with your career when your name is a mic drop.
Right? And if you talk to her, she still doesn't really believe that sometimes.
Wow.
I mean, I think everyone does. Everyone. No, actually, I know one person who actually got over his imposter syndrome, but he also, battles with the autobiography of Will Smith. So we're okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Is Mother of Dragons on
She of Many Dragons.
Is that on Amazon?
No, it's on Royal Road. It's one of the plot bunnies, and she sneakily released it under a pseudonym and then integrated it back into her main account.
Do you know why she did it under a pseudonym?
Because
testing if it was going to be viable or not.
No, that's not Ray. No. I suspect. I mean, I've spoken to her a few times, but I don't know her all that well. I don't want to speak for her.
Sure.
But I suspect that she did it because she was afraid that people would say, "Hey, why don't you write all those skills?"
Oh, right. Like, this is fantastic, but it's not what we were hoping for.
Yeah. Shout out to Brian Norton. Where's Wildcards?
Ooh.
We were talking 2 days ago, and he will get this joke. All right. Phil, this has been a wonderful show. Thanks so much for listening. We are going to be talking for a bit more after the show so that the people on Patreon have even more to listen to. And if you're interested in listening to more Phil and myself talk about, quite frankly, really, really interesting shit, then do check out my Patreon. It is right below the video. You can find a link to my link tree. With that being said, thank you so much for listening and or watching. Please follow, like, subscribe, ring the bell, worship the ancient dragons, read the ancient scrolls. You know the drill. And yeah, Phil, any last words?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, and it's been a blast, and yeah, it's been great.
Dope. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.
We were so professional right up to the last 10 seconds.
Yeah, like the last minute always wrecks me.